Good morning, YouTube. Okay, this is recording number 2 because I ran out of room to record on my phone. Go figure. But yeah, so basically I'm coming to you to do a recording just to address one of the questions that was asked on my videos, and that was kind of wanting to understand more about the method to the madness when it comes to starting your locks, and particularly the way that I got my locks, the way they are, if that makes sense. So, the first aspect to it is definitely going to be to, do your research. Really research everything about locks. Everything from the starting process to, long-term results of locks. But really go into it with the mind that as much research as you do, your locks will not look exactly like that person's, but they can at least act as a general guideline to see if, okay, are these the type of locks that I want? Will these match my lifestyle? For example, deciding to do freeform versus palm rolled versus like doing micro or sister locks, understanding what that's going to look like. Understanding with sister locks, you will have to go to a sister loctician, or however you say that, a sister locks consultant, sorry. Yeah, go to one of them to continually have it maintained. So money-wise, that is going to be a long-term investment as well as time, right? Not saying that's a bad thing for some people's lifestyle. That really works. Deciding whether you're going to palm roll or interlock, or be one of those people who regularly goes to the salon. Just different things to consider. And when you're thinking about different types of ways to start locks, you want to look at everything from the comb coil method, two-strand twist, braid locks, interlocking, of course, sister locks, as well as just free forming, really. Each of those has a different starting method and has different things to know about them, and as well as in general what your long-term results are going to look like. As most of you know, if you watched my frequently asked questions video, I started mine with two-strand twist, okay? And I started it on relatively long hair, and that kind of goes into my second point, which is, I really think it's important to know your natural hair before you start your locks, okay? I know a lot of people tend to put the comb coils or the twist or whatever in right after big chopping, but I really do believe there is a lot of benefit and value in knowing how to deal with and manage and love your natural hair before you start locks. So I'm not saying you can't start them as soon as you chop your hair, but I really encourage people to give themselves maybe even just a couple of months, 6 months, to a year, to really just get to know their hair a little bit before they decide to start locks. Another reason I say that is because you never really get a chance to experience it, and that's another reason why there's a trend right now of people combing out locks and cutting locks because they want to know what their natural hair is like. For me, I know what my natural hair is like. Don't get me wrong, I loved it, but there's not this itch to cut it and figure out what that's about because I had enough time to really learn it, grow it, love it, and now I wanted something different, okay? I'd say the next major thing to know when starting your locks is about lock parting and lock size, okay? So a lot of people always are asking me, how do you get your locks so thick? How can I thicken my locks? How can I do all this, right? And the fact is that somewhat your locks are going to be determined, your lock size is determined by the parting, okay? For example, let's see if I can show you. So this guy up front, right? I've got about this parting size, you can kind of see, and this is about the size of the lock that came out of it, okay? And if all my parts are this size, a lot of then after that, how many locks I have and the lock size is going to be primarily determined upon how much hair I have, right? So I think it's partially the lock parting, the density of your locks, and just how much hair you have. If you don't have a lot of hair, even if you do your parts the exact same size as mine, your locks may not end up being as full as mine are because you don't have as much hair as me. So there's only so much thickening of locks you can do depending on the amount of hair that you have, and the density of your locks and that kind of thing. Because for me, for example, if I combine, some locks together, of course, I can increase the size of them. But, then, of course, it's not going to look as thick, So just understanding that that's a big part of it, as well as when it comes to your parting, understanding that how that will look when you are styling, okay? Your styling will be affected because when you're doing braids and twists and pulling things up, if you don't have very even parts or rows and that kind of thing, that can have an effect. For me, I kind of went by row and parted and tried to do more like bricklayer method, but they weren't all just equal little squares or diamonds or anything like that. That was my preference just from the many years of wearing two-strand twist and, it being able to work for me even while I styled them or whatever. Looking back, I could have made them a little bit more even, but it is not really to the point to where it bothers me. But I will say, if you can really, really, really pay attention to your parting, I'd say from about your ear up. So like go like this and part that up. So you could kind of pull and section and do whatever you need to do in the back, or you don't have to be as precise in the back. But up here in the front is really where it makes a major difference for all the styling, for all the different things. Like even this one, you can see it's not like necessarily a super even part, but it is distinct enough to where if I styled, you would be able to tell a difference, if that makes sense. So key things we talked about so far: research, the method you start, your parting to determine your size, shape, and that kind of thing. For me, a key thing to remember, now you might be wondering, well, how did you get all of your locks relatively the same size? They're not all perfect. You've got the ones up here too. I'll show you a little bit more. But all of them are basically the same size, or at least in the same family. There's not any giant locks back there or anything like that. I guess I could take it down and show you. All of my locks are basically the same size, right? So the way that I was able to do that was partially from the knowledge of knowing my natural hair. I knew that when I would do my twist, I have a lot more hair at the top part of my head than the bottom. You can kind of even tell from right here, looking at it. So basically I knew that in order to have an even amount of locks, or a relatively even amount of locks, I needed to do more locks on the top to make them a little bit smaller. And then, of course, down bottom, I didn't have to do as many locks because I wanted them to be thick enough to match the ones up top. So this is where it comes into knowing where your hair type and, how your hair reacts to different parts. The hair down here is very thin and fine. And even when I did my two-strand twists would not necessarily plump up a whole lot. Shrinkage is not very bad at all down here. Okay, it's just a looser, wavier texture of hair. Up here, my hair is very kinky. It's very dense. I have a ton of hair up here. So I knew that I was going to have to really make a lot of these parts a lot smaller than the ones down here, which is why, yes, I have more locks up top, but at the same time, all of my locks are pretty much the same size, and it kind of works because my hair is in layers, So really having an idea of how your hair operates. If your hair is like a looser or wavier texture, from my experience, I did not get as much like swelling of the locks, if that makes sense. So, these are basically the same size that my twist would be even when I was doing them on loose natural hair. Same thing up here. Does that make sense? I think that may not be a foolproof method for everyone, but if you're starting with two-strand twist, I noticed that, at least with my hair, they started out being this size, kind of, and then they plumped up a little bit as all the loose hairs came along, that fuzzy stage. And then as my hair began to mature more, it kind of really condensed. And this size is what I ended up with, which is not that far off from what I had when I had the two-strand twist at the beginning, okay? So while there may be a huge difference when it comes to like comb coils and other things, at least from my experience with two-strand twist, I'm telling you that the end result was not that different than the starting point for me. Yes, it's all one lock and there's not as loose, like, how do you say it? You don't have that texture and, but the key thing is the sizing ended up being really, really close to that of my two-strand twist. So that is what I really use as a guideline for me because that's what I've had over the years. I know how my hair reacts, operates, plumps up, that kind of thing. And that worked out for me. So, I don't want to make this too long, but key points being do your research, and really determine what you want your locks to be like and maintenance and everything long term, okay? Be very selective of the way you start your locks because that can have a major impact on the way that you are going to have to maintain, whether it be sister locks or braid locks and that kind of thing, okay? Also, be aware of parting. Parting is key to your lock size, styling options, and that kind of thing, okay? but also understand that a lot of it will be tied to the thickness and density and everything of your hair, okay? Because we can't make something out of nothing. Of course, you want to know your natural hair, really know your natural hair and have an idea of how it operates, how it reacts, your different textures, so that you have a better understanding of how you need to style those locks in those different areas. And I guess the last piece of advice would be, if you really do not feel confident starting your locks, go to a professional. Um, it's your hair, and you're gonna have to live with your hair and deal with it and grow with it. And for me, I was willing to take that risk because I figured, okay, if I don't like it, I can just comb them out or chop it off. At any given time, I have so much loose natural hair. If I just decided I'm over it, I can just kind of cut it and have me a little TWA. But honestly, I was very pleased with my locks, and I was willing to take the plunge. But I just wanted to give you guys a little feedback on what to expect, things that you could do to maybe make your journey a little bit smoother, and start on the right foot, so that you're not having some regret when it's time to, when you get further down the line and you do notice your locks maturing. So, but yeah, just giving you another close-up shot of what my locks look like. You can really see the color today. I'm very pleased. But yeah, so hopefully that answered your question, guys. And, feel free to drop any more questions below, or if you need clarification on anything, let me know. But I just wanted to give you guys a general understanding of kind of where my locks are at and how I got to this point. So if you have any other questions, like I said, drop them below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.